What's going on, Reds? Let's properly talk about Elliot Anderson because this is becoming one of the most important transfer situations Manchester United could face this summer. And I'll be honest, the more I think about it, the more I believe United cannot afford to waste time on this deal. This is not one of those transfer rumors that appears for a week and disappears. This feels serious. It feels calculated. And it feels like United already know exactly the type of midfielder they want moving forward. Because when you look at the current squad, the issue is obvious. Manchester United's midfield has lacked intensity for too long. There have been too many matches where United simply cannot control transitions. Teams run through the midfield too easily. The energy drops late in games. The pressing becomes inconsistent. And physically, United sometimes looks second best against younger, more aggressive teams. And that's exactly why somebody like Elliot Anderson suddenly makes so much sense. This is a midfielder that brings aggression without losing composure. That's important. A lot of energetic midfielders can run all day, but when they get on the ball, they panic. Anderson doesn't look like that. He looks comfortable under pressure. He looks confident receiving the ball in tight areas. And most importantly, he plays with personality. You can see it every time he steps onto the pitch. He doesn't hide. And that mentality matters massively at a club like Manchester United because Old Trafford can either build players up or completely destroy them mentally. There's no middle ground. Some players arrive at United and the pressure swallows them whole. The expectations become too much. Every mistake gets highlighted. Every poor performance becomes a headline. But when I watch Anderson, I see somebody that actually embraces responsibility. That's one of the reasons why fans are getting excited. Now, of course, excitement alone doesn't win football matches. United have made emotional signings before, and we all know how some of those turned out. So this isn't about hype. This is about profile. Anderson fits the modern midfield profile United desperately need. He's mobile. He's aggressive. He's technically secure. He can press high. He can recover possession. And he's comfortable progressing the ball forward. That combination is difficult to find, especially in the Premier League. And because of that, United are not going to be the only club paying attention. That's why timing becomes everything. See, this is where I start getting worried about United's transfer strategy in general because we've seen this movie too many times before. United identify a player early, fans get excited, negotiations drag on forever, other clubs enter the race, price increases, and suddenly the deal becomes impossible. We've watched it happen repeatedly over the years. The elite clubs don't operate like that anymore. When clubs truly believe a player is a priority, they move quickly and aggressively. Look at clubs like Manchester City. Look at Arsenal. Look at Liverpool. Once they decide a player fits the project, they waste very little time. And that's exactly what United need to do here. Because the longer this situation drags on, the more dangerous it becomes. Especially when you consider the player's value could rise even higher after international football this summer. One strong tournament performance, and suddenly the asking price explodes. That's the reality of modern football. And honestly, I don't even think Anderson has reached his full level yet. That's the scary part. You can already see flashes of a complete midfielder developing. The athleticism is there. The confidence is there. The football intelligence is growing rapidly. And at his age, that ceiling could become incredibly high over the next few years. That's why some fans are comparing this situation to the early days of Declan Rice. Not necessarily in playing style, but in trajectory. Remember when people said Declan Rice was overpriced? Now look at him. Now he looks like the heartbeat of an elite team. That's what smart recruitment looks like sometimes. You pay for what the player is going to become, not just what he currently is. And I think United know that. The concern is whether they'll act decisively enough. Because this summer is massive for the club. Absolutely massive. This isn't just about signing good players anymore. It's about building a proper football identity again. Fans want to see a younger, faster, hungrier Manchester United. A team that can dominate physically. A team that can press aggressively. A team that can actually control matches again. And in many ways, Elliot Anderson represents that shift. He feels like the type of signing that signals a new direction. Not a superstar named signing for marketing purposes. A football signing. A player chosen because he fits the system, fits the intensity, and fits the long-term rebuild. And that's why I keep coming back to the same conclusion. United cannot sit back and wait. If this player is truly one of the priorities for the summer, then the club needs to make that clear immediately. Not in July. Not after weeks of endless rumors. Not after 5 other clubs join the race. Now. Put the offer down. Start the conversation. Force the situation early. Because if United hesitate here, they could lose control of the entire midfield rebuild before the summer even properly begins. And that's why, for me personally, this feels like the moment where Manchester United have to show whether they've truly changed their approach in the transfer market, or whether we're about to watch the same mistakes happen all over again. Now here's the bigger conversation that I think a lot of fans are starting to understand. Signing Elliot Anderson would not just be about replacing legs in midfield. It would represent something much bigger. It would represent the beginning of Manchester United finally building a younger, modern midfield that can compete with the best teams again. Because when you look across Europe right now, the top teams all have one thing in common. Energy. Look at the midfields dominating football today. They're aggressive. They're athletic. They're technically clean under pressure. And most importantly, they can sustain intensity for 90 minutes. That's the standard now. Football has changed massively over the last few years. You can no longer survive at the top level with slow transitions and static midfielders. Teams press harder now. Games move faster. Managers demand more physically from players than ever before. And honestly, that's where United have fallen behind. There have been too many games where United's midfield gets overrun. Too many moments where opponents bypass the press with ease. Too many situations where the team loses control after the first 20 or 30 minutes. That has to change if this club wants to compete seriously again. And that's why Anderson is attracting so much attention. Because he looks built for modern football. When you watch him play, there's constant movement. He's always available for the ball. He doesn't stop working defensively. He drives forward with intensity. And even under pressure, he rarely looks rattled. That composure is massive. Especially for a young midfielder in the Premier League. A lot of talented young players struggle once the pace of the game increases. But Anderson already looks comfortable at that level. And that's why many fans believe he could develop into one of the best all-around midfielders in the league over time. Now, of course, potential means nothing unless you develop it correctly. That's the key. And this is where Manchester United have a huge responsibility if they truly want this transfer to happen. Because if you're trying to convince a player like Elliot Anderson to join your project, you need to sell him a vision. Not just money. Not just. We're Manchester United. A proper football vision. And surprisingly, I actually think United deal have a compelling story to tell right now. Because despite all the criticism surrounding the club over recent years, this genuinely feels like a reset period. A rebuild. A new cycle. The old squad is slowly changing. The club is trying to lower the average age. The recruitment strategy appears more focused on hungry players rather than superstar names. And there's finally a growing understanding that success will require patience. That matters to ambitious young players. Because if Anderson joins United now, he wouldn't just be joining an already complete machine. He would become part of the rebuild itself. That's a different type of pressure, but it's also a different type of opportunity. At some clubs, you arrive and you're simply another piece in an already dominant team. But at Manchester United, if you become one of the players responsible for bringing this club back to the top, your name gets remembered forever. That's the difference. This club creates legends differently. Fans still sing about players decades later because of what they represented during important eras of success. Anderson has the age profile and mentality where he could genuinely become one of the leaders of the next generation. That's why this transfer feels bigger than people realize. It's not just about improving the starting 11 next season. It's about building the foundation for the next 5 years. And that's exactly why United cannot allow uncertainty to drag on too long. Because once hesitation enters negotiations, other clubs smell opportunity immediately. And let's not pretend there won't be competition. There absolutely will be. Top clubs across Europe are constantly searching for midfielders with Anderson's qualities because those profiles are extremely valuable in modern football. And if multiple clubs begin pushing seriously for him, United could quickly find themselves in a dangerous bidding war. That's where things become risky. Because then the conversation changes from, should United sign him? To, can United still convince him? Huge difference. And football moves fast. 1 week you're leading the race for a player. 2 weeks later another club has completely changed the situation. That's why being decisive is so important. The best-run clubs prepare aggressively before the market fully explodes. They identify targets early, hold discussions early, and try to avoid unnecessary drama later in the window. United need to start operating like that consistently. Especially in a summer this important. Because make no mistake, this could be one of the defining transfer windows of the club's next era. Fans are watching carefully now. Not just to see who United sign, but how United move. Do they act like a serious modern football club? Or do they repeat the same slow mistakes that have hurt previous rebuilds? That's what supporters want answered. And personally, I think Elliot Anderson could become the perfect symbol of this new direction if United get this right. Young. Aggressive. Technically strong. Premier League proven. Hungry to grow. That profile makes sense. And honestly, if United manage this situation properly, this could become one of those signings we look back on years later and say, that was the moment the rebuild truly started. But to reach that point, the club has to be brave now.